and it interprets. And in one sense, it's just physically what I see, but there's a lot that I see out here as I look around. And how you train yourself to do that is going to help you inform yourself as you walk this out day by day. And if you feel you're seeing that you're being put in a place where the Lord is offering you opportunity to basically do what He told you to do, which is love one another as He loved you, you're going to stay on a path that's going to get you there. And if you don't see those things, you're going to not do that. And in that case, you're probably going to feel you're not on any particular journey, and you're going to get a little bit frustrated. And I think that's how somebody like Abraham can leave, even though he doesn't know where he's going. He basically had this, he saw, he understood the Lord was telling him, go to another place, do another thing. But you can't judge by success, because Hebrews goes on to say in 13, and all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting they were foreigners and strangers on earth. So there's really a little bit of mystery about it.
Well, and that sets up, to the students particularly, the $100 question of how do you define success? Because you're here and you're at this elite, institution, and so you're, in the, what is it, whatever the percentage selection rate, you guys probably know that. But, and the expectation and everything is driving you to success, and so the question becomes, how do you define success? And as you kind of set off on the journey, how are you going to define success? And I think that I don't have the answer for you, except I really do believe that it's a message in Scripture that God does not call us to success. He calls us to faithfulness. And so I don't think they're mutually exclusive, or that's not to say there's a certain outcome that has to be some type of poverty code, but I do think you're in this culture that's driving you to a certain understanding of what success looks like. You need to grapple with that and spend some long time on that. And just ask yourself the question, what does that mapping look like in my mind, and where does faithfulness play in that? And where is, because if you're not training your ear to hear, and if you're not developing a pattern to say, I'm going to go where I believe God's leading me, and I'm going to build in the advice and counsel to have that be an informed choice. Those are two different paths, or kind of two different muscle groups that you'll develop. And so I think it's important to wrestle with.
I think it relates to something Gary said this morning as well. We were talking about the need not only to envision what a good community is here at Dartmouth, but also to really ask the question, how do we become people who can build that good community? It seems like the same thing applies to decision-making choices. Not only what does it look like to make a good mission choice, but what does it look like to be a kind of person who chooses well? And that seems like it's something that can happen, develop daily, even as we're asking for that daily bread. That we become the kind of people who practice the discipline of wisdom.
Let's pick up a little bit on this concept of success and how to measure it. So an element of success has this finite nature. If you've succeeded at something, it's over. You can kind of measure it in time. But another element of success is succession. Somebody is going to come after you. In traditional roles, if you have a job, you leave it, you're done. Someone else's problem to train the next person, or that job may never get done. But in a vocation, you're part of a larger mission. And so your time here is just a window into a much larger opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about succession planning, recognizing part of, to build on what you were describing in Hebrews, that what you're doing is a piece of something larger. How do you do succession planning, not only in a job, but in a vocation, speaking from a vocational aspect? How do you plan for your successor?
Well, I think the fact set's going to be different, except I'll say this. Everybody's in the succession planning business in this room. And, mine, in my own experience, was my granddad started his company, I was the third CEO, and we went through 94 years just with 3 family members. And so, you know, I knew when I felt, okay, I've got to start thinking about this. You know, it was a 4-year plus process, and we started talking about it that long ago. And so it had that dynamic to it, and, you know, we can talk more about that, but it's kind of its own little story. But for everyone here, just like we're talking about, and Katrina's saying, what's success? You know, let me just throw out another idea to wrestle with a little bit, which is you have a gifting and a talent. Part of that puts you in this room. You've got to have a certain character that hosts that gifting, so your character can impeach your gifting. So you have that all right, but then you walk out that talent and experience and gifting, and that becomes kind of your destiny. But let me throw this idea out, is that calling is multi-generational. So, you know, when God says, I'm the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you know, he's defining himself because his nature and the nature that we follow after is multi-generational. And that's not just in terms of being a father, and although it's a huge part of it, the best part of it, but it's also in your workplace, in if you're in medicine, or if you're a professor, or if you're, in Andrew's case, what's his succession plan? What's the multi-generational aspect of what his part of his calling was? Well, it was defined, the replacement. I mean, you see what I'm saying? It was to have that carry forward. And I think whether it's what I went through or what, you know, I think the very cool part of what Greg does all the time is he's trying to equip that generation. They take up part of his calling and go forward with it. To me, that's one of the coolest parts of the kingdom, is this multi-generational dynamic. So it's something that puts us all in this kind of succession mindset.
I maybe affirm what you're saying in Scripture.
Yeah, that'd be better.
I think it's entirely scriptural. One of the great mysteries in Scripture is Hebrews 39 and 40, the same chapter. After all those faith heroes that went when they didn't know where they were going and died before they got here, they were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. Since God had planned something better for us, that only to get together with us would they be made perfect. And I read that for years, and I read that as, yeah, so only together with them, you know, I'm a follower. Only together with those people wouldn't be perfect. And it's exactly the opposite of what it said. It said, only together with me are they be. Right? And so what that's really saying is only this whole succession is what you're doing at Helmerich D'80, what Walt did, and what your granddad did. And you're perfecting what they did. And then somebody's got to come behind you. And yeah, you're putting that in his hands, you hopefully choose wisely and so on. We went through the same thing with the Wheelock. We had to kick you out of here. We almost shut down the Wheelock site 2 years ago. We couldn't find a successor, and I told Andy, we gotta go. And the last minute, we just kind of got lucky and we found a successor. So it isn't always deliberate, right? But it's a whole, and you can't always see across all that. I do think it's important when you leave well, though, to leave a lot behind. I mean, you piled up a lot. When I left Sampson to come here, I piled up enough work that they had deals I could never be for myself in 2 or 3 years. I left it all for them to work on as I left. Figure they sorted out. I know you've done the same, right? So I think that part of leaving well is being sure you left it well. Not just that you did it well, but what you left behind is going to work.
How does that change? So it's a different way to think about it. If you think of what you're really doing will not be accomplished until your successors grasp that vision and move forward. How does that change leaving? When you think about leaving, knowing that your work is now only now beginning, how does that change the way you think about leaving?
I'll jump in and give Andrew some think time. I think it does change it. And I think, part of what I hope to take away from our time together is this longer horizon point, where you're thinking, hey, I need to be extending my point on the horizon that I'm going to play to. But then it also, and again, to me, and I hope that the students here kind of capture a little bit of this, to me the coolest thing is equipping and mentoring and helping to empower that. And true story, I'm up here 4 years ago, and Greg's kind of pitching the whole wheel-off conference approach and why it's important, which I thought was very, very important, and I bought into it. So we're at this breakfast, and there are 5 students, a couple of them you probably hear. And so he is a guy that runs at 100 miles an hour all the time, and so he's, kind of flywheels turn like this, and then he finally gets up and leaves. Where'd Greg go? Well, he's got some other appointment. He's got another breakfast, is what they said. So we're at Blues. We've got another breakfast. So, you're good.